It was November of 2018. The Arkham community was looking forward to an announcement for a possible Arkham game. At this time, the Arkham games had pretty much extended past a lot of DLC and a lot of content, and people in the community were looking forward to what it was that Rocksteady or maybe even Warner Brothers Games Montreal was working on. I remember around that time, the Video Game Awards was also coming up, so there was speculation that at least we might be seeing something in the 2018 Video Game Awards. Well, around that time, Stefan Hill came out and actually put up a tweet. The tweet basically said, "Looking forward to the Game Awards this year. We're still hard at work in our development bunker, so don't expect an announcement from Rocksteady Games. When it's ready to show, you'll be the first to know. Spoiler, it's not Superman." And he had this emoji face of, yikes, it's not, or something, I don't know what this is. But I guess these were probably some of the signs that we were probably not going to be getting, say, a game that everybody was possibly expecting. Now, some of you remember that if you basically pay very close attention, Arkham Knight was littered with a lot of different Easter eggs, as well as pointers to a possible Superman game coming down the road. So I guess a lot of fans were probably taking it to mean that a Superman game was coming. There was also another leak on a website that had gotten some leaks of video games in development correctly, especially a Resident Evil game that came out at that time, but this leak panned out to not be true. I remember one of my very first videos on this channel actually highlighted that we were possibly getting a Superman game because of specific things that I thought was going to happen. Apparently that video, I was wrong, dead on. And this is why I don't really like making too many speculation videos anymore. I learned my lesson the hard way. But here is what the truth is right now. The entire conversation, and Stefan was actually correct at that time, we did not get a Superman game. In fact, what we're getting right now is an entirely different concept. I made this entire segment of this video and talked about this because I think it's time for us to maybe start to dig in as much as we possibly can, even if we're not going to get a lot of information, as to some of the circumstances before the Suicide Squad reveal, and even more importantly, the announcement that Stefan Hill and Jamie Walker were leaving the studio by the end of 2022. Now, if you've been paying any attention, you would notice that as of now, it appears that the news still stands that they were supposedly, this is the co-founders anyway, these are the co-founders of Rocksteady. They were supposedly going to be leaving the studio at the end of 2022. But if you actually go on Stefan Hill's Twitter, he still has on his bio creative director and co-founder in Rocksteady Games, worked on Batman Arkham, now working on Suicide Squad game, opinions are my own. So maybe he hasn't changed it. Maybe he is still in the pipeline, completing a few things, or maybe using his PTO and his paid time off before he eventually signs out. I wonder what could have been some of the circumstances that had someone who is quite prolific at his craft leave the studio. Could it be creative freedom? Could it be differences in terms of direction? Could it be that right now Warner Brothers wants to go a whole different way and are possibly not necessarily interested in doing fan service, but instead wanting to pursue the bag, hence the live service elements that we've basically seen surrounding the game? Now, we could speculate all we want all day, and I think that's possibly what this is going to end up being. But there is one major fact, and that's a fact that is troubling that I think everybody must go into Suicide Squad with an extra bit of caution. I've seen a lot of fans in our community blow this off, and I think you really have to pay very close attention to things like this when they happen, because we have had some high-profile creators leave their project under different circumstances, don't get me wrong, but it's also something where after they left and when the game released, we got to see some reasons afterwards. One of them being Hideo Kojima and the Metal Gear Solid 5 debacle, where Konami pretty much had him leave, and then we found out that the game pretty much had a rushed ending. They didn't even let him, or apparently the Video Game Awards, when it was hosted, he could not attend based on a few things. I think Konami was trying to keep their PR in a different light, and it was kind of really weird. Now, I do hold Stefan Hill and Hideo Kojima in almost similar light. If not, I hold Stefan Hill in a much higher light. Sorry, Metal Gear fans. I'm not really a big fan of the series, not because it's not good, but because I never got to play it. That's just it. So Stefan Hill is my guy when it comes to say, oh, we're looking at developers and we're looking at creative directors and their prowesses. This is just what I know. But at the end of the day, you could say maybe one is a more prolific one than the other because of how they change the industry. But again, you can't necessarily talk about one without talking about the other when you're talking about the GOATs in terms of creative direction. So this is something that we kind of can agree on. And seeing that these creators and these gentlemen who pretty much were the co-founders of this studio are leaving around the time of the launch of the game should raise your little, alarms just a little bit. Even if it doesn't go crazy, let those alarms continue to just resonate in the background as you're approaching and looking at what this game actually has to offer. It's interesting. Another thing that I can even give, just imagine for those of you who are Mortal Kombat fans, right? Imagine if, say, maybe you're looking forward to the next Mortal Kombat game or maybe the next Injustice game, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Ed Boon is like, hey guys, I'm going to be leaving NetherRealm Studios at the end of 2023 after the release of our next fighting game. That would trouble a lot of fighting game fans. Sure, maybe Ed Boon or maybe some of the decisions that he's made in the past in terms of his decision making have not favored all the fans, but it probably will not be something that fans are going to just say, well, it's not really much of a big deal. It is a big deal. And Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, to me, seems like the leaving of Stephen Hill and Jamie Walker at this time is a very big deal that I've seen being minimized. And I really am kind of, I don't know, maybe I'm shocked or surprised. I'm probably the only one who's worried that this is something that everybody must pay attention to, and I'm just sounding the alarm. And possibly this is going to fall on deaf ears. Another thing, too, that I also want to go ahead and try to maybe iterate in terms of this is probably another video game that has a huge following. And, that is the video game, in the Tekken, in the fighting game scene anyways, that's Tekken. And most of you know that one of the big creators in the Tekken scene, I think his name is Harada. And imagine if he was leaving, the development of the new Tekken game, Tekken 8, after it came out, you would also see a big uproar, regardless of the direction that they've gone in other titles. So seeing that Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is going to have the live service elements, yes, we can say, okay, but if the creators were standing by and backing the project with just their presence, it would probably have given me a little bit more confidence overall. But them leaving is where a lot of my, expectations really did start to go down for the most part. I just could not stomach that, fact that they were leaving a game that they had actually spent a lot of time and effort in developing, and even seeing that, at the time that fans were looking forward to what they were making and them saying, well, we're not making a Superman game, and possibly not being certain how fans were going to react to what it was they were making, also kind of brings us to the position where we say, man, what in the heck has been going on within the decision makers in Warner Brothers? Now, I am still in a position where I would love to wait and see how things fall, in place. I would be, foolish to go ahead and say all is not well or conclude something crazy at this point in time. But nonetheless, I still want to make sure that I'm, putting things in perspective at this time being. And I'm hoping that other gamers in our space and in our community are also taking these things into consideration. So let me hear your thoughts in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching the video. I appreciate you guys' time and audience, and hopefully we'll talk pretty soon in another one. Peace out.